Hi, we're going to be learning the top 10 teachings of Brachot Daf 58. We're going to do for the first 5 of the 10. Number 1 is the bracha that we make when we encounter 600,000 Jewish people in the land of Israel. Number 2 is the story of Ben Zoma thanking God for all the good work that people do, food, clothing, business, and how to be a grateful guest. Number 3 is a blessing on a wise person, Jew or non-Jew, or a king, Jew or non-Jew, and what the differences are. Number 4 is the story of Rab Sheshes, who was blind, but could hear on a different level than people who could see. And number 5 is the idea of God and his earthly counterpart, as well as a story with Rabbi Shila. Okay, so without any further ado, let's get started. Number 1 is the blessing for 600,000 Jews. The Gemara in Brachos 58a, or 58.1, I should say, the Amud Aleph, says the following. In the name of Rabbi Hamnuna, if you see Aluchse Yisrael, that's a multitude, which will later be defined as 600,000, we make a blessing. The standard text of a blessing starts with Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, blessed are you, and so on, God. And then it continues and says the unique text for this specific occasion is Chacham Harazim, which means the wise of that which is hidden, or the secrets. Now, a brisa just confirms that and gives the reasoning behind that. And it says the reason is she'ein da'atam domeh zeh lezeh. Their minds, their intellect, are not similar to one another. Ve'ein partzufein domeh zeh lezeh, and their facial features are not similar to one another. And the Gemara continues a little while later in the name of Ula and says, this is not in Bavel. In Babylonia, if you see a huge gathering, you don't say this blessing. And also, it's got to be 600,000. There's a few questions. The obvious question is, it's very impressive. I don't know if this has ever happened in my lifetime, but why wouldn't you say this in Bavo? That's one question, the obvious question. The second question is, if there was such a momentous thing that happened, the thing that I would think, in my humble understanding, is it's reminiscent of Yotzei Mitzrayim, those who left Egypt, which were 600,000 and more, because the women, children, younger and older, below 20 and above 60. But it was the 600,000 is how we describe the Yotzei Mitzrayim, or Matan Torah, the Torah being given. So I would identify this with either Exodus, Torah, or a representation of all of Klal Yisrael, even if it isn't literally all of the collective of Israel, but it's enough to represent Klal Yisrael. So one of those three things. And not only do we not do that, we say something like, blessed is the one who's wise enough to know the secrets. Why is that? Because all of these people, they don't think alike, they don't look alike. And I know there's a whole discussion lately. Every scholar wants to say, what is a Jew? And comes up with some like weird stupidity of just to publish a book. Well, here's what a Jew is. A Jew is somebody who doesn't have to be like the other Jew. They don't look the same. They don't even think the same, and they're still Jewish. That's why we make this blessing. We don't make the blessing on Exodus, or even the Torah being given, or even the idea that we have a nation. The nation is in front of you. That's obvious. There's 600,000 people. That is a nation. That's a group of people that's significant enough to be considered a nation. The fact, to answer the question why in Israel, because it's a nation that did have a homeland. So it's not just faith alone, because it's not just a religion. There's a people with a nation. So there's people, there's a nation. And you want to know more about it? That's the secret. That's the secret of being a Jew. Stop writing your stupid books about it. Nobody's interested in your stupidity. All these stupid professors writing real stupidity. I've never seen such brilliant people write such stupid things. But anyway, that's the secret. All of these people, they don't think the same. Why are they a people? They are people. They are people. We know there are people. There are people. That's why God can testify that he understands them all. And there are people, precisely a type of people that are different. They don't have to all be the same, but they're still a people. That's the reality. Okay. So we're celebrating diversity within a group. We're celebrating uniqueness within a group. And we're celebrating a God that relates to each one of them on their level. And that's a beautiful thing about Judaism. Okay, Mazel Tov. Number 2. Ben Zoma. It's a continuation of number 1 because Ben Zoma was standing. Who was Ben Zoma? Is one of the 4 sages who went into the Pardes, and in the Pardes he had a negative reaction. Something went wrong with him in his mental abilities. It's not clear exactly what that means. Different people have suggested different things. But he still seemed to be a brilliant scholar both before and after the incident, and had always something very interesting and erudite to say. He was one of the people who constantly studied and was diligent and insightful and wise, amongst other things. So listen to this. And he, for example, he's the one who says, who is wealthy, who's happy with his lot, who's strong, who overcomes his evil inclination, like things like that, or the famous saying we say in the Haggadah that Rabbi Eliezer ben Azariah said, I'm like 70 and I wanted to prove that we have to mention the Exodus on night, and I didn't know how to prove it until Ben Zoma analyzed the text and says, Kol Yimei Chayecha, the extra word kol comes to include the nights as well, the days. So Ben Zoma is a very interesting and colorful character in the Talmud, and he says the following thing. He sees all of these Jews gathered, supposedly the 600,000, at the Temple Mount, and he makes this bracha that we just mentioned before, this Chacham Harazim, it's called, the wise knower of secrets. And then he adds on to the bracha, he says his own nusach, his own composition, which is Baruch Shabar Ela L'Shamsheni. Blessed are all these who have been created to serve me. Now, it's brought down in the commentators that would fit in with what the Rambam says in Mar Nevuchim, that the purpose of the regular people is to take care of an elevated person, the philosopher, the Rambam, Ben Zoma. But that's not really the meaning if you look carefully at the next thing Ben Zoma continues and says. He used to say, how different am I from Adam, the beginning of creation of Adam, where what did Adam have to do to find bread or to find clothing? We start with the bread. He would plow, he would sow, he would reap, he would harvest and gather and thresh and winnow and select and grind and sift and knead and bake. And then after all of those things, that was a process. It would take a year or whatever it is, many, many very difficult things and times to do. And that was all the things he had to do, pretty much on his own, little assist from Eve. But other than that, it was a lonely 2 of them working on all of these things. And I get up in the morning and it's all ready. The bakery is delivering. And the same thing with Adam. Until he had to have clothing, he sheared, he cleaned and disentangled and spun and wove and did all of these things. To me, on the other hand, I get up in the morning, it's there. Either it's in my closet, there's a tailor there ready to make me custom-made suit. And not only that, there's every nationality with every particular quality that they have. They come, they're at my doorstep, willing to sell me whatever it is that I'm looking for and I need. And what we see from here, it's another level, another quality. Usually people think you're making a bracha, there's only one thing, which is true, there's only one thing, God. But the truth is God made many things. He made people, Jews and non-Jews alike. And in that sense, you need to have hakarat hatov. Some of the blessing includes not just blessing the source of all, which is God, but also the manifestations of creativity of the human beings and the human experience, that those people, because of them, they provide these things for me. Yes, they might cost something, but they're still doing it for me. So it's actually almost the opposite of the reading, trying to read Maimonides into this. It's a celebration of, yes, they actually did something for me. I appreciate they didn't do it for themselves, they did it for me. Now, if you think that's, might be like that, might not be like that, listen to the next thing he says. What does a good guest say about his host? He says, how wonderful that the host did all of these things for my sake. All of the meat that he bought, all the cuts of meat, and all the bottles of wine that he brought out before me, and all the wonderful pastries that he got, and all of the different things. Well, how much work did he have to do? And remember, each of the things that he purchased, what were all the backstories of the things that went into those things to be able to be sold by the various vendors who did sell them? A lot, right? And I'm so grateful for this. So in other words, he wanted to really bring out all the things that were done for him, not for the people doing it for themselves. On the contrary, other people who are not grateful, he actually would say, what did the host really do for me? He did everything. He gave me one little piece. So he made the meat, he made the brisket for him and his family. He got the wine for him and his family. He didn't do it for me. I just happened to be there. I came along for the ride, but he would have gone without me and done all of these things. So in other words, in life, do we just say that the people have to do what they have to do? They would do it for somebody else, or do you look at it like they're doing it for you, and you're so grateful that they're doing it for you? So it's pretty clear from the second and third statement, especially the third statement about the guests, of how Ben Zoma views things. Now, that's a very important way to be grateful, and very important that when we make a bracha, we make two types of brachot. One type of bracha is just to thank God. The other type of bracha is really to be thankful for the great things that people are providing for us. Number 3 is the special blessing we make for wise people and for kings. So the Gemara says the following thing. If you see a Jewish sage, you say, Baruch shechalak mechachmato lireyav. You say, blessed is the one, the same thing, Melech Olam, the King of the universe, that has given a portion of his wisdom to those who are in awe of him. As opposed to saying a wise person amongst the nations, you say the same introduction to the bracha, but you say shenasan instead of a chelik, a portion he gave, mechachmato libiotav, his wisdom to his creatures. So there's obviously two differences: chalak versus natan, a portion versus giving. By the way, a lot of times in the Torah they are almost interchangeable, the idea of chelik and natan, but other times they have significant implications and unique meanings. And we could read a lot into it, as much as we want to. For example, we say, Ki chelek Hashem amo, Yaakov chevel nachlato, that God's people are they're a portion. They're there's almost like a physical relationship, a part. A chelek means you get a piece of something. So, okay. If you see a Malchei Yisrael, if you see a Jewish king, you say, again, Chalak Mechvod Alireya. The introduction is the same as all the brachot, and he gave a portion from his honor to those who are in awe of him. And if you see a king of the nations of the world, you say, Baruch Shenasan Mechvod Alibriotav. Blessed is the one who gave from his kavod, from his honor or glory to his creatures. And Rabbi Yochanan is quoted as saying, a person should always make an effort to go and to run after seeing a king, not just a Jewish king, even a non-Jewish king, because if you'll merit, you'll see the difference between Malchei Yisrael and Malchei Ovdei Kachavim. A Jewish king, and a lot of the commentaries say it's talking about, by the time of Yochanan, Rabbi Yochanan, there was no Jewish king. He was referring to the future Jewish king, to the Mashiach, and a regular king. Just a couple things about a king. What's the idea of kavod? kavod is honor. Why don't we do power? In fact, there's a question of whether we say a bracha on a president, let's say a sitting U.S. president, a current president. Do you say the bracha, assuming they're, this shenasan michvodo libriotav? Do we say that blessing on a president? Why wouldn't we say do we say there's something lacking in the presidency because they could be they could lose the next election? Is democracy a subversion of some? We want totalitarianism. We want a king that can't be questioned. I don't think that's the case. I think a democracy is a form of electing an official to essentially be the equivalent of a king, to have that executive privilege with a balance of powers. I think it's a healthy thing. So probably you should make a bracha, because by not making a bracha, you're basically perpetuating the stereotype that only a tyrant should be a ruler. And it's important to perpetuate a new type of thing, that a ruler doesn't have to be somebody who has absolute power, because we know absolute power corrupts. So that's my vote. There are different opinions amongst the poskim. They argue about it, and you could either not say the bracha because you could say it's a suffix brachat lahaka, when we're in doubt, when it's a bracha we're lenient, or you could say the bracha and rely on the serious poskim that do allow you to say a bracha in this circumstance. There's a lot to say about kings and a lot to say about wise people and the difference between Malchi Yisrael and Malchi Umot Ha'olam. But we're going to go on to number 4. What's number 4? Number 4 is the story of Rab Sheshas is as follows. He was blind, and Rab Sheshas, again, is a sage who, I believe he went through all of the Talmud, or whatever it is that he could get his hands on of the Talmud, every 30 days. And a bunch of people heard that the king is coming to town, so they went out to greet the king. And amongst them was Rab Sheshas, and another person was a Saduki. We don't really know who this Saduki, what does that really mean? We've discussed in other shiurim what the Saduki may or may not have been. And the Saduki already started insulting Rab Sheshas from the get-go, saying things like, a pitcher, you can bring water to the river. I don't know if that means to pour it into the river or take it from the river, but where do presumably to get the water from the river to drink or what have you, but where does a broken pitcher go? Meaning there's no use for you. So basically, according to this Talmud, the Saduki was picking on him for being impaired, by being blind. Before he even argued with him about any religious things or anything like that. And Rav Sheshas kept his cool, and he said, you'll see who knows more, you or I. So challenge accepted, and the troops are coming by, and it got really loud, and the Saduki says to Rav Sheshas, the king is coming. Rav Sheshas says he's not coming. Okay, time goes by, a second troop starts passing by, and it's thunderously loud, and the Saduki says, the king is here, or king is coming. Rav Sheshas says, now the king still isn't coming. By this time, much time had passed, and finally a third troop starts coming through. And then all of a sudden it got really quiet, and Rav Sheshas says, now the king is coming. The Saduki says, why are you saying that? How would you know that? So he says a statement that I'm going to quote later about how he knows it. And then he quotes the story of Elijah. And in that story of Elijah, in his prophecy, he says the following. And behold, God was passing, and a great powerful wind, smashing mountains and breaking rocks, went before God. God was not in the wind, After the wind came an earthquake. God was not in the earthquake. After the earthquake came a fire. God was not in the fire. After the fire came a still, thin sound called mamadaka. And it was only in that silence or that quietness that God was present. So since the human king has a quality that's like the divine king, that's going to be number 5 to describe that in more detail. Since it's quiet, I know it's the king. And sure enough, it was the king. The king comes and Reb Sheshes makes a blessing on him. The Saduki says, how could you make a blessing? You don't even see him. Okay. So, this is a very powerful story. And in this story, on a simple level, you have a question. It's almost like I want to leave out the fact that he was a Saduki, because that kind of diminishes from the importance of the parable quality of this story. You have somebody who can see just fine and somebody who's blind. And the person who's saying that he can see is he's basically saying there's no comparison. Somebody who can see and somebody who's blind, it's just ridiculous for the blind person to even go to a place where the whole idea is to see. There's no purpose in it. It's like going to a river with a broken pitcher. The broken pitcher is of no use to take water from the river. So why are you even here? Anyway, so that's the question. And these kind of nastinesses persist. You don't know you can't see, there's no purpose, and you're making a blessing on something you don't see. The whole point of Reb Sheshes is you don't know what you're talking about. You see everything and don't understand anything. You see and hear noise, you get noise confused with value and importance, when maybe it's just the opposite. The noise is to generate interest in something that doesn't actually have real value and real things. Your eyes see pretty stuff. They're distractions to what's actually of value. So you're missing out. So Reb Sheshes basically has this inner wisdom, and it goes very well with this idea that we before were talking about Ben Zoma and Chacham HaRazim, this kind of inner understanding. And that's what the lesson that this is about is sometimes in life, it's not the fancy cars and the flashy suits and the big names and the artificial kind of like, if you see somebody who has like a big following, maybe it's because they're so shallow. So they have like the lowest common denominator. Maybe it's not, it doesn't mean that's the person where I'm going to get wisdom. On the contrary, that's the person where I'm going to get entertained, and they're going to take away my time and waste my time with stupidities, right? So like if I say, oh, this is the best, this is a show that the most people are watching, probably there's a Yiddish saying, the olam is a goylem. It's not always true. The Yiddish saying means the masses are fools. Again, the noise represents foolishness, represents people who are making noise, whatever. They think there's a king. There's no king there. There's nothing there. It's just noise. So that's what Reb Sheshes was able to upend the arguments of the Saduki, because he said, I understand something you don't understand. You're looking at the superficial thing. Why? Because you don't listen. Because you're so busy. You see with your eyes, you don't listen with your intelligence. And Reb Sheshes explains a very important lesson to us, to listen internally, not just with the superficiality. Number 5 is so important. It's about this idea about God and his earthly counterpart. In the story of Reb Sheshes, I'll repeat that line of the story. I don't think I even said it, because I'm keeping it for number 5, is Reb Sheshes answered him, how do I know that the king is here? Because machusa de ara ke'ein machusa de rakia. For the kingship on earth is like a mirror of the kingship of heaven. And next story, the continuation of this, is a story with Reb Shila. Reb Shila got in a dispute with a certain person who was acting inappropriately with a certain woman, who he punished because of it, and this person went to the authorities and complained, and the authorities took Reb Shila and said, who do you think you are to being able to give punishment to people without we're the judge and jury here, not you. So miracles were happening, and at some point he said a verse, L'cha Hashem Agdula v'Gvura v'Tiferes, to you God is greatness, strength. And they didn't understand what he was saying. What's the meaning of it? What verse? They didn't understand the language. They said, what exactly are you saying? And he said the following thing: Blessed is God who created kingship here on earth, which is a reflection of the heavenly kingship. And they loved that. And they gave him whatever. They gave him authority to judge. So let's talk about this concept. This concept is the Yesod HaYesodot Amud HaChachmot, the foundation of all foundations, and the pillar of wisdom of Sifrei HaKabbalah, of the Kabbalistic things. But interestingly enough, a lot of people think this is Kabbalah. It doesn't belong in the Talmud. It does. It is in the Talmud. Here it is in the Talmud. That means that when we look at, there's a counterpart between the human realm and the divine realm. And in the tradition of the Baal Shem Tov and the Maggid of Mizrich and the Baal Shem Tov, they say one of the differences is that Kabbalah made out of God a human, and Chassidus made out of a human a God. Meaning Kabbalah emphasizes how the Sfirot that we can anthropomorphize in terms of human dimensions are also a reflection in their divine, are also in the divine origin, and Chassidut is basically explaining how God is our mirror. So in Kabbalah, we say it made God into a man, like it talked about God in a way that has 10 sfirot. And in Chassidut, it makes a man into God because it talks about how what we do affects the divine. The truth is both elements are in Chassidut and both elements are in Kabbalah. The question is, how far does this concept that we say is now in the Talmud, how far does it go in the Talmud? If you look in sections, Brachot Daf Yud, for example, there's a lot of reciprocity in the Chumash itself. There's a lot of reciprocity between us and God. So perhaps this thing that's expanded and expounded upon in Kabbalah is not really unique to Kabbalah. It's really in Gemara and Torah as well. Thank you.